to part 2 of our Luke podcast. We last left off with a discussion regarding Luke and his dynamics with other characters in episode 8, most notably with Rey and Kylo Ren. As a reminder, I'm Lee, and today I'm joined by Reya and Mary. Let's jump right in. So, we know that, in a way, Luke has failed with Ben Solo. He was training him, he was supposed to take care of him. Somehow he didn't realize that Kylo Ren was falling prey to Snoke. He didn't realize what was going on with him. He didn't protect him. He failed Leia in that way too, and we know that he felt responsible for what happened with the one boy who destroyed it all. We're assuming it's Kylo Ren. We don't know for sure, but it sounds like it is.
Going back to Rey, is Luke thinking of his failure with Ben Solo as a cautionary tale when he's training Rey? We've talked about how Rey, in many ways, is taking the place of Ben Solo by Leia's side, by Han's side, by Chewie's side, and now with Luke. This should have been Ben. You gotta wonder if he's thinking, he's gotta be harsher on her because of how he failed with Ben, and he's gotta protect her in a way from Ben, now Kylo Ren. I wonder how that will influence that dynamic. And then going back to Luke and Kylo Ren, has Luke really given up on him entirely? Will he stop trying to bring him back to the light? Or does he think, he's too far gone now? What do you guys think?
To understand how, we don't know a lot of things which would help us determine how he will treat Rey. But because I feel personally there's a lot more to Ben's fall to the dark side than we know. You've rightly said that Snoke had been watching Kylo from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So, it's Ben from the very beginning. So, we don't, know when this whole descent started. We also know that he didn't communicate with, Leia, Han, because he felt responsible for what happened. The only thing we can do is speculate a little bit. And, there's this, last year during the Dubrovnik shoot, like Mary mentioned, there's a rumor that we got from one of our sources that there's a scene where a young man is wearing a pith helmet and staring out over fortress battlements, and this scene makes Rey change her mind. Now, I read this along with a couple of things. One is there's a rumor of Luke visiting a space casino in episode 8 in Dubrovnik, as well as concept art released by ILM of episode 7, where you see a picture of a set of a marketplace that looks a lot again like the Dubrovnik set, where you have a Jedi Padawan walking with Han. This makes me speculate whether, and this Jedi Padawan is not a young kid. It's either someone in their late teens or someone who's in their early 20s. So it's definitely not a very, a kid. So, and that kid is, and the Padawan is dressed like a traditional Padawan, not like Anakin who favored dark colors. This is someone in light colors. So I really wonder whether something went wrong, or when Luke, I mentioned earlier there was a rumor of Luke hunting out the dark side. So was he on some mission and did something go wrong? Because that determines whether, Luke should, what Luke really wants to, how he's going to react to Kylo, how he's going to treat Rey, what's his level of skepticism in general. But my hope is that Luke and Kylo's reconciliation, happens. I think Rey will facilitate it, but I hope that Kylo's return to the dark side is his own. Because it shouldn't be that, the original trilogy was about Luke. And while I feel he's important for this trilogy, I think, a person's growth is when they make their mistakes and they rise above it. So I think Kylo should come back to the light on his own.
Or maybe have Rey help him.
Fully agree with you, Reya. I think Kylo should decide for himself to come back to the light, but I think he needs something to kind of like a catalyst for that change. And I think that could be a connection with somebody, just like Darth Vader decided on his own to toss the Emperor over the railing. I'm sorry, that scene always makes me crack up. But Darth Vader decided that on his own, but he needed to have that little bit of good that was left in him kind of reawakened by his connection with Luke. In the same way, I'm hoping that Kylo Ren will decide on his own to come back, but be it through his connection with either Leia or Rey or Luke, maybe. But something has to jumpstart that, I think.
As we know in The Force Awakens, Kylo is very much conflicted, between the light and the dark. As we hear him say, he feels the pull to the light again when he hears the name Han Solo. But I think what will bring back to the light side, he will decide on his own. But what will be the catalyst for him will be Rey. He'll have some sort of relationship with Rey because as we've seen when he kills Han Solo, I think family relationships will not bring him back. And he seems to be very angry at his father for some reason. As he says to Snoke, Han doesn't mean anything to him, which is a lie, of course. But I don't think unlike Vader, I don't think it'll be family this time that'll bring him back.
I think, family has tried already multiple times, right? They've tried and they couldn't get to him, so maybe it has to be Rey. And I think that there's a special connection between Kylo and Rey because they're so similar and so different. And I think Kylo will be able to see some of himself in Rey because the journey that she's going on right now is the journey that he failed to complete. So I think he'll see echoes of that in himself. And I'm not expecting personally for Rey to make Kylo her project. I think she's got way more important things to do for herself. I don't think she's going to set out to rescue this guy. I wouldn't want to see that anyway. But I do think that in a way she will lead by example for him and maybe awaken that part of him or maybe through human connection or love, something like that. But I'm definitely hoping to see that develop more in 8. And I'm just really wondering how Luke will play into that. Anything else to add about Luke and Kylo Ren?
Well, it's very difficult.
Yeah, there's not enough information at this point for us to understand what's going on there.
I agree. The only thing I would add to that is that, I don't know if you guys remember in 7, Kylo was so determined to find the map to Skywalker. Was he really wanting the map to Luke, or was he wanting the map to the First Jedi Temple? And if so, is there something there? I mean, there's got to be something there, right? But is he looking to go and... Because it sounded to me when I first saw episode 7 that he really just wanted to find Luke and wreck him, kill him, get rid of him. Snoke probably wants Luke dead because he doesn't want the new Jedi to rise, right? But is there something going on in the temple itself that they're trying to reach? That's just a question we'll have to wait and see the answer to. One thing we wanted to talk about was Luke and Leia. And this is, kind of bittersweet to talk about because, as we know... Carrie has passed away unexpectedly, and it's been a devastating loss for all in the fandom and for, pretty much anybody who knew of her because she was such a bright light. But her passing like that, it has left a lot of question marks, more so than before. What's going to happen? How are they going to work that in? Her absence into the story. And one of the things that I've been wondering is, will, in a way, Luke take over Leia's role with Kylo? That's a possibility, too. If they didn't get to film, a reconciliation scene between Leia and Kylo Ren, because they were maybe waiting to do that in 9, just speculation, will this now be Luke's, kind of in a sense, role to finish that, and bring him back? But what's going on between Luke and Leia? The sense is that there's a rift there. Maybe Luke thinks that Leia hates him because of what happened with Kylo, and that's why he won't talk to her. But it's very clear that on Leia's end, she just wants her brother back. She's desperately wanting him back, not just to fix things, but just to see him, connect with him. Surprising that she didn't go get him on Octu, maybe, at least for me. But I think she's got this, resistance to run. Maybe that's why she had to send Rey, but it's sad that, she didn't get to go get him herself. Any thoughts on that?
Rey as a source of hope to Luke to bring him back.
Yeah. Because there has been 6 years since Luke and Leia have been in contact. I mean, because we know at least 6 years, because in Bloodline, we know that they have space Skype going on. But when Leia tried to contact Luke and Ben, and they were traveling together at that time, there was radiation interference wherever they were in the galaxy. I just have a speculation which we can probably take up in another podcast. It's very interesting that Phasma wears an armor that protects against radiation. And yet they are in a place where there was radiation interference. So, I mean, it seems like a curious connection between those two things. But anyway, the thing is that I feel like Luke was, I find it very strange that we know that after Return of the Jedi, after Endor, he keeps going off because we know that he went off during the time of Life Death when Leia is pregnant with Ben, Han is gone, Luke is gone. We also know from Leia's the recent book of Leia, the Rebel Princess. I've forgotten again that damn title, but Ben was force sensitive. And the time was right. She and Han sent him to Luke, so which means they were obviously back in touch again. So it looks like Luke kind of pops in and pops out out of their lives like some sort of space astronaut. But the thing is that I think Leia, this I hope that they have shot the scenes of Leia and Luke for episode 8 at least, because I mean with the loss of Carrie Fisher is a very painful one for all of us Star Wars fans. So I mean it would be at least some consolation. I don't know about the scene. I mean, there were supposed to be two major scenes. One is the reconciliation, meeting Luke again, and the confrontation with Kylo. At least her meeting Luke would give some sense of closure, because as you rightly said, Lee, the Kylo arc could, I'm not saying it's perfect, could still go to Luke, or it could, maybe they would bring back Han. Okay, I'm going into controversial territory here, but bring back Han, not necessarily alive, but since we are talking about other non-Force users, taking other forms and other Force beliefs, there is a chance that they could still bring Han back. Because if you're not, if you look at, in writing, there's a reconciliation with a parent, so maybe it is with Han may take over that. But I do hope that at least Luke and Leia's reconciliation does happen in, episode 8 and gives him some hope, because they were, obviously very close, through the original trilogy.
That ties into what I think it was you, Mary, who was saying earlier that they're much closer in the EU than seen in the books that are canon and in episode 7. I'm wondering if the angle that they're trying to push is that because of Vader, because of their differing views on Darth Vader, that kind of drove a wall between them to some extent, because Leia could not understand where Luke was coming from, and Luke couldn't, I don't know. Luke loves his dad, and Leia has a lot of bitterness towards dad. So maybe that was part of the rift, whereas in the EU, it seems like Leia was able to resolve that. So I wonder if that's what's been driving them apart. And then in many ways, Kylo Ren is the Darth Vader of this new trilogy. So maybe Luke is thinking that Leia hates him because of what happened to her son. Something like that. I'm wondering if that's, the conflict, and then that could lead to resolution if they get to talk about it. And I hope we do get to see that.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. It remains to be seen how Han and Leia reacted to Luke and his involvement with it. We don't know if there was confrontation between them, or if Luke left a message, or if he just walked away without facing them. But, regardless, as we said, Leia is pretty desperate to get Luke back. She says, I can't believe I was so foolish to think I could find Luke, bring him home. And then when she sees the full map at the end, she's just so happy that, she'll be able to find him. But as you were saying, Lee, I have this feeling that, Luke and Leia's relationship isn't as tight in the canon verse as it is in the Legends verse. Because, like I've been saying, they seem to be there for each other a lot after Return of the Jedi. Like I said, Legends Luke tried to make sure Leia and Jason and Jaina were safe, trains her in the ways of the Force. Of course, Leia resolves her issue with Darth Vader in Tatooine Ghost. And in Dark Empire, when she's pregnant with her third child, Anakin, she goes to confront the Palpatine clone and Dark Luke and manages to get him to come back to the light side. He protects her and Anakin from Palpatine, which of course, very different from canon. And as you were saying, I think there isn't as much conflict between the twins regarding their father, which could have strained their relationship canon. But one thing that I think will happen now regarding Luke and Leia, Reya, I disagree with you that maybe Luke and Leia will be reunited. I think the tragic passing of Carrie Fisher will have changed this. And also there are some rumours. Latino Review reported last year that Leia will be injured in episode 8, which has led to some speculation that she will be in a coma for the rest of the film. And there's also been speculation that Luke leaves Act 2, goes to Dubrovnik, because Dubrovnik Times reported that Mark Hamill was spotted, or at least someone who looks like him was spotted. And the fact that Carrie Fisher was meant to have a big role in episode 9, so it would be no small feat to speculate that Luke and Leia were going to have a reunion of some sort, and maybe have a confrontation over what happened with Ben, and Luke leaving Leia all alone. But now with Carrie's death and Lucasfilm confirming that there'll be no CGI Leia, I personally can't see them recasting such an iconic role. So I think this will add more tragedy to the Skywalker family, give Luke more guilt, because I think they will change it and have Leia die either before he arrives or he speaks to her when she's in the coma, and she dies then, if rumours are true, therefore leaving their relationship unresolved, tragically.
Oh God, don't say that. I was seeing those photos that recently there was a photo of Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher on somebody's profile that was being,
Oscar Isaac's.
Absolutely. Oscar Isaac's profile. So I was kind of hoping for that reconciliation. Oh say it isn't so.
Me
Mary.
too. I want the reconciliation.
I know, me too, but unfortunately with Carrie Fisher's death, I can't see it happening. I just can't. And it'll probably place, maybe more strain on Luke and Kylo Ren's relationship in a way. But we will see. Time will tell. It's a sensitive topic.
Okay, well, one thing we wanted to talk about was Luke and Snoke. So I think, there's a lot of animosity there, aside from the, good versus evil battle that Maz Kanata talked about, where presumably Luke is on the side of good and Snoke is on the side of evil. Obviously, they're going to be adversarial, but even beyond that, the fact is that Snoke stole Ben Solo from Luke. So, of course, there's going to be animosity there. And then if it turns out that Snoke is really trying to bring about, absolute evil, he has an evil agenda regardless. He wants to prevent the rise of the new Jedi Order, and Luke is pretty much the only one that can bring about that Jedi Order. So definitely antagonism there. What do you guys expect to see from Snoke and Luke's dynamic?
I have no idea on this one. I have absolutely no idea. My Snoke theory sucks, basically. But, because there seems to be a connection between Lor San Tekka and Luke in The Force Awakens. I think it's in the Force Awakens visual guide. It's mentioned that Lor San Tekka travelled with Luke to find old Jedi relics and learn about the Force. And of course, Kylo Ren knows him as well. So I think my little theory is that maybe Snoke was maybe like either a member or infiltrated the Church of the Force to get to Ben in an easier way. And as we know, Leia sent Kylo Ren away to be trained with Luke. So maybe Snoke was involved with that, because in the Force Awakens novel, it's hinted that Leia knows of Snoke, and of course this is seen in the film, as she said to Han, it was Snoke that seduced us onto the dark side. So maybe for whatever reason, Snoke convinced Leia that Ben had to be sent away to Luke in order to manipulate Ben even further and tear him away from his family. That's speculation.
I actually agree with you on this, Mary. I think that Luke had some interaction with Snoke in the past, because you have a conversation between Luke and Leia in Heir to the Jedi. This happened years before, obviously. This was during the time of the original trilogy in that timeline. But she tells Luke about her Senate experience and says that betrayal comes wrapped in a friendly cloak. So I wonder if Snoke, like you rightly said, whether Snoke or maybe one of his agents, it need not even be Snoke, infiltrate the Order in some way. We know that Luke didn't set up a Jedi school. We just know it's some sort of an order. So maybe he was targeting Ben from the very beginning. So this would make Luke's sense of failure towards, himself, his family, all the more acute and painful. And you already know that he's lost so many loved ones over the years. He's let his family down, because if you think about it, his family, his loved ones, it's all in a mess. And on top of it, there is this rumor that Luke is fearful that if he returns into regular society, and we know that from Bloodline that Karai says that he doesn't have much influence out in the world, only among his acolytes. So maybe Luke has like the rumors suggest, maybe he fears he could be manipulated, his powers misused, he could keep hurting people he loves. So he chose to stay, away. And I would say Snoke maybe is, maybe he thinks that Snoke will use him in some way. Because even in the Clone Wars TV show, the three Celestials, they were the most powerful Force users at one time. And we're talking about, distress signal that Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka get in the beginning of the episode is 2,000 years old. So these Celestials must have gone. The codes are 2,000 years old, which means they have probably been there longer. So similarly, maybe Luke has become so powerful and he thinks that it's better that he is also in exile, because he could be used by someone like Snoke. So maybe Luke has this fear and is keeping away.
I just wanted to connect that, what you just said, Reya, about the Mortis trilogy. What about that spoiler that there's the convoys, that they're on Luke's island? There seems to be a connection there. So like Luke might be communicating with those birds or whatever.
Well, the Mortis trilogy itself is not directly related to convoys, but the convoys actually appeared in a few episodes before in a Wasaka, I forgot these names.
But wasn't the daughters, wasn't she
connected?
Yeah.
Actually, that I'll explain. She doesn't appear as an owl in the Mortis trilogy. She appears as a kind of a griffin. But the owl that appears in Rebels, whenever Ahsoka appears, the daughter, Convery, was appearing, who had the similar color scheme to the clothes the daughter wore. So people, and in the Mortis trilogy, when the daughter died, she gave the last spark of her life to Ahsoka. So I would say why. So people are speculating there is some link between the daughter and the Convors. Convors don't appear in the Mortis trilogy itself. They appear in a few episodes prior. But according to Dave Filoni, the Convors are not creatures of the dark side. They are kind of, I guess they're some sort of witness. I don't remember his exact words, but they are, I would say they're some sort of witness for the dark, not the dark side, of the Force. They're witnessing great Force users. So, moments in the Force or Force users.
To be honest with you, I don't remember exactly what the quote was, but I remember reading that Dave Filoni made a statement that was kind of, how to say, it was very vague, but it was something like, this is an avatar for something else. So fans kind of connected that to the Mortis trilogy with the whole Convors maybe being connected to what's going on with Luke at the Jedi Temple. I mean, that's all speculation.
Right. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
That is the quote. That it's an avatar for something. And people thought the color scheme is the same as the daughter, so it must be the daughter.
But we don't know. But it's interesting to think there's some link there.
Yeah, but there's also been a convo with the color scheme of Ahsoka that's landed up. So I don't know who, what exactly. And I think somebody has said there, I've forgotten, I thought it was Dave Filoni, that they are witnesses, but it could be someone else, but that they are witnesses for something. So maybe these are, people have speculated everything from Avatar of the Daughter, Ahsoka is the Convor. These are past Force users. When they die, is this what they become? Are these all dead Force users hanging around with Luke on his island, guarding the first Jedi temple? A lot of speculation, but no one really knows for sure. But what we do know is that these Convors are not dark side creatures. Definitely not.
Well, I wanted to, going back to Luke and Snoke, I wanted to just think a little bit about the possibility. We've been talking about how maybe Luke will ask Rey to kill Kylo and he'll say no, and that will prompt her crisis and her, change of heart or whatever. Maybe the opposite is true. Maybe, for me, it really stuck when Snoke said, if Skywalker returns, the new Jedi will rise. That's the thing that he fears the most. His goal for me in episode 7 was to get to Skywalker first, to neutralize him or to get to that map to prevent people from connecting with Luke, to keep him far away. If he can't be killed, then he has to be, kept away from sight. So maybe Snoke will want Kylo to kill Luke. And maybe when the moment comes, Kylo won't be able to do it. Not because of lack of ability, but rather he will choose not to. So I wonder if that's another way in which the whole Kylo Luke Snoke thing will develop. That would be interesting if it were the case.
Definitely. I'd love to see that.
Right?
Are you basically saying that he won't kill Luke, not because he's his uncle, because as we saw he killed his own father? No small to assume he might kill his own uncle, but he'll be doing it to defy Snoke, much like Rey might refuse to kill Kylo to defy Luke.
Possibly that, or maybe that will be the line that's drawn in the sand, because maybe through his connection with Rey, Kylo Ren's already changing, and when he's asked to take that step, he finds that he cannot, because the good in him has already been strengthened to the point where he says, if I do this, Snoke will win, and I can't let that happen. Something like that. Like, that could be the thing that pushes him to break his alliance with Snoke. Either being asked to hurt Luke or being asked to hurt Rey. That's my theory.
I can actually think of one way this could happen is that Kylo, maybe he was always obliged, maybe his affection for his mother is one thing that kept him obeying Snoke, and if Leia gets injured, he's going to be pretty miffed, and then when Snoke says harm Luke, he's going to say, go to hell.
Yeah. Well, one other thing we wanted to talk about was Luke and his relationship to the Force. So we've seen that it's different in canon versus the EU. We don't see Luke as Super Luke. We don't get to see Super Luke in film. What really struck me about Luke was that he was too old to be trained. If Anakin Skywalker was too old in episode 1, think of Luke as a teenager. And yet he was able to gain these abilities, and he was able to stand his ground against Darth Vader by the time that they dueled. He just learns quickly. He's obviously very talented in the Force, but we don't really see him displaying any special Force techniques in the original trilogy. He could not withstand, he was getting fried by Palpatine. And if Vader hadn't stepped in, maybe that would have been it for Luke, So we don't get to see that prodigiousness in film. But in the EU, as you guys described, he is Super Luke. He can do it all. What do you guys think we'll be seeing in regards to Luke and the Force in the sequel trilogy?
Well, there's a rumor that Luke is more of a wizard than a lightsaber wielding warrior. That is the exact quote. So, and then we know that he, there are rumors of him bringing down a ship, that he, blows up a hut. Then there's even one where he's supposed to unconsciously levitate and not be in complete control of his powers. Lots of rumors of this sort. And then there's the thing that he's seeing ghosts of people long gone. I mean, whatever, they're Force ghosts or spirits, who knows what he's seeing. There's also a scene that has been described where he's standing on a rock, a meditation rock, and getting visions of Tatooine and the binary sunset that we spoke about earlier. So, is it that, he has spent so much time absorbing the Force, like he's been kind of connecting with the Force? It's some sort of, I put my emotion aside. Let the Force come in. So now he's not able to distinguish between his feelings, the Force. He is very powerful, but he has no control over his powers anymore. And, when you have that kind of loss of control, that usually brings fear, and then it brings fear of the dark side. I'm not saying Luke is dark, but I think he is, and I don't think he's really lost his mind in any way, but I think he has lost himself. Because, he's been doing this without a teacher. He's been doing it all on his own. So, and all the Jedi till, in the past, the previous Jedi Order, they had holocrons, they had a library, they had old masters to consult. Luke had none of this, and occasionally a Force ghost would talk to him as if he was hallucinating, and that's it, here and there. I just think that he's, he has had to rely so much on the Force, maybe he's lost Luke in this whole thing. But he's powerful.
That's interesting. I can see that. I really like that idea. Also, maybe losing Ben to Snoke, as well as his new generation of Jedi, caused a lot of anger and hatred within Luke, and he's now struggling to control it, and is conflicted by it and his Jedi teachings, and so maybe that's just boiling up on him, that his powers have become unstable, and that would be one way to do it, and make him and Kylo more alike than they care to admit.
That's a great point, and that quote, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think if Luke's not corrupted, which I don't expect to see evil Luke pop up, although some people have talked about how that could be a possibility, I don't think so. But I do think Luke would be very sensitive to how the pull of the dark side, maybe he's hanging on by a thread. Maybe he's so focused on keeping it together that he has lost himself. I think that's a great way of putting it, Reya. Do you guys have any theories as to what you'll see Luke do with the Force, aside from blowing up huts? I'm thinking if they did such a cool thing with Kylo and that blaster shot, I'm hoping we'll see Luke do some special things like that. That would be really awesome.
Isn't he supposed to tackle the Knights of Ren in some awesome way and send them flying all over the place?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Supposedly he takes out all of them, right?
That would be good fan service. But I don't know about, Force techniques and stuff. I really don't know what to expect. I'm just going to go with the flow, but I wouldn't mind maybe like a little confrontation between him and Kylo Ren, like a little battle, and then Kylo leaves the Knights of Ren to deal with him, and he goes after Rey.
Yeah, that'd be cool. A little battle. I like that. Okay, well, we're coming towards the end. We're starting to wrap up. Let's go into a little bit of educated speculation, maybe with a dash of wishful thinking on my end. What do you guys expect to see happening with Luke in the sequel trilogy? And what would you most like to see happen, and what would you hate to see happen? Like, what would be your worst case scenario? So I'll start. Based on the spoilers that we have heard and some of the analysis that we have covered in our previous podcast, I do expect to see in some form that dynamic of Luke as the angry god in the Garden of Eden, which would be Octu, and Adam being Rey and Eve being Kylo Ren. So some kind of dynamic like that where Luke is kind of angrily training Rey, because there seems to be a contentiousness to their relationship where he expects that Rey is going to be doing things the way he thinks it should be, and then Rey is kind of actually wandering away from that and doing things in her own way. And then Kylo Ren coming in and throwing a wrench into that and kind of pulling Rey towards the temptation of the dark side. I kind of expect to see that kind of triangulation there in their dynamics. And if there's one thing that, the old Jedi Masters have proven in Star Wars is their capacity to become even more foolish with age as opposed to wiser. I'm thinking of Yoda and Obi-Wan, who they're supposed to be, Yoda is like 1,000 years old. He should know better than to tell Luke, go kill your dad. He should know better than to tell Luke, abandon your friends. And yeah, that's exactly what he told him. And Obi-Wan also, at one point he tells Luke, I don't want to lose you like I did Darth Vader. I mean, come on. Like, that's so selfish. You're supposed to be your Force ghost. You're supposed to know better than this. So there's a lot of room for Luke to be kind of foolish in that way and think that, we got to get rid of Kylo Ren, forget him. You can't reach him. And to counsel Rey in a way that's not necessarily in anyone's best interest. I don't think we'll see it like that clear cut, but I do expect that Luke has lost himself a little bit, like you guys have said, and that we'll see him be imperfect, realize, that he's been mistaken, and then change. I hope we'll see something like that, like a little bit of a revisiting of the hero's journey in a way in Luke's character arc in 8 and 9. And that to some way echo, the failures of Obi-Wan and Yoda. That's what I would maybe not just expect, but maybe want to see. As for what I'd really love to see happen, it's just Luke, in a way, taking over for Leia, recognizing that there's still light in Kylo, and wanting to bring him back and kind of finish what she started, in a sense. As far as worst case scenario, I would hate it if episode 8 and 9 became the Luke show. Like I've heard fans talking about it online and some sites where they say, oh, Luke's going to come in and he's going to defeat Snoke, Luke's going to take over. It's like dad coming home and finds this mess the kids have made, and then he, fixes everything. I don't want to see that. Luke was already a hero in his own trilogy. He was already Super Luke in his own EU, character continuity. I don't think we need to see him swoop in and take over from Rey. I think Rey has been established as the hero in this trilogy. And I think she needs to finish and develop and solve things in her own way, with help, of course. But I definitely don't want this to become Luke's story. This is Rey's journey, and I think it should remain that way.
Definitely. I would like Luke to go from believing Kylo can't be redeemed to believing he can, and to see whether they can forgive each other for what happened, which is, as we said before, is what Star Wars is about. I want him to realise that returning to the old Jedi ways isn't the right way, and that forming a new way is, which I think relates to the title The Last Jedi, we'll get to in a minute. If there is mistrust between him and Rey, I want something to happen that will make Luke trust her and make him realise he was in the wrong for wanting to kill Kylo and not trusting her. I don't think they'll ever be friends, but I think there'll be a deep mutual respect between them. I also want to confront his past and his fears and come back to the fold, and I think Leia will have something to do with that. What I don't want to see, exactly what you don't want to see, Lee. I don't want him to hijack Rey's story, and I don't want him to be Space Jesus and like an all-powerful Gary Stew. Like when Mark Hamill was in a Star Wars Celebration in London, when Mark Hamill was talking about, like Luke's perfect introduction would be the lightsaber flying out of the snow and landing in Luke's hand. I'm like, no, come on. Rey is the hero of her story, as you perfectly put it. But this is just selfish reasons, but I would love it if Mara Jade is reintroduced and he's reunited with her. Please, Lucasfilm, if you're listening, bring her back. Maybe they can meet in a book or a comic set after the sequel trilogy.
Oh, do you mean married? Do you mean that you want, like, for Luke to be married and to have a kid with Mara, like, already? Or for him to meet her?
No, I want them to meet. The only way I think they could bring Mara Jade back and have her interested in Luke is if they meet after the sequel trilogy.
Some kind of an older romance.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Just bring it back, Lucasfilm, please.
Luke himself, I think he will be super Luke to some extent, because they have to do fan service. I mean, people are expecting Luke to be cool. I mean, though I would hate, and let me finish off with this part. Like you both, I would not want to see this become the Luke movie. Luke's movies were the original trilogy. Luke is an important character, but I don't think it's his movie. It's Rey's story. It's her heroic journey, and yes, it could be, and maybe Kylo's and Finn's, Poe's, everybody. It's their time. So I really don't. I hope they don't, turn it into something like that. But that being said, I do want Luke to be very powerful, and I also do want to see a little complexity. So I think that the years of his responsibility of trying to keep the Jedi Order going, putting aside his emotions, losing people, it's all taken its toll. He's traveled all over the galaxy. He's collected lost lore. People have been protecting lore. Like Lord Santeca had helped him find stuff. There are, small short stories in Star Wars Insider about how Jedi during Order 66 had given things to whatever holocrons, material, information to be kept protected to, regular people to hide in places. So there have been stories like that. So maybe, Luke kind of, and there have been characters like in the comics like Rakus the Hutt who collected holocrons, material, lightsabers. Maybe Luke had to go all over the place trying to gather what he could and, learn on his own. So he is kind of the custodian. We talked about the title right at the beginning about The Last Jedi. So he is the custodian of Jedi lore at this point. He's the last Jedi. So, when I look at the title, we were talking about what the title could represent, before the podcast. I do see this red font with the white font as where Star Wars is written in red and The Last Jedi is in white. In alchemy, white is usually the color just before a transformation, and red is the color of transformation to create a philosopher's stone. So I feel that the red they're showing is a transformation, and even if you look at the three title things where red has appeared in the past, it's appeared in the Clone Wars, the 2 episodes where the Darth Maul returns, and the Night Sisters were wiped out. The Night Sisters were wiped out in a previous episode, but we see the carnage of the massacre in what was the aftermath. We see the aftermath in those episodes where there was a red title. Then we see it in Return of the Jedi, and we see it in, I believe, Revenge of the Sith. So in the Revenge of the Sith, the Jedi Order got wiped out. Return of the Jedi, the Sith Order gets wiped out. But I wouldn't say it's about a destruction as much as a transformation and heralding a new, way of thinking. So I see it in a more positive light. So if you look at the Clone Wars, we have something where Yoda mentions that the Jedi Order had, were focusing on the light side. So the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. So every time the Jedi grow strong in the light side, or whatever, any Force users grow, focus on the light, there's going to be a dark side that's going to emerge to oppose it. If you look at Yoda's trials, in the last few episodes of the finale of the Clone Wars, we see that the Force priestesses that test him represent both positive and negative emotions, and his trials take place in places which look very bright and happy, like the wellspring of life, and on the other hand he has to go to the Sith world of Moraband where he sees Sith spirits. So the answer isn't about light side, dark side, you should not, when emotions come, throw them away, or when you're a dark sider, you will be using your emotions for power. I think it is about accepting all the emotions without the fear of it. And so I think it's about Luke probably, either he's already realized it, or which I think is unlikely. I think it'll be more about him, Rey, Kylo. Again, speaking about the Mortis trilogy, you have a father, son, and daughter. I'm not saying Luke is the father, Rey and Kylo are son and daughter, but in a more, mystical sense, yes.
In a way, yeah.
So they're all on an island. So, and in the end of the Mortis, balance was restored. So maybe these three have to be there for some kind of a balance to be restored. But I also say, on the other hand, Star Wars is a story, is the story of family. Because, it is for a movie that families go to see, so it is about family, and it's also about hope. So I'm still kind of, my best case scenario is Luke gets to, reconcile with Kylo and meets Leia in episode 8. And episode 9 is more the focus on maybe trying to get the resistance back in shape and fighting the First Order, which probably is going to do pretty well in this. Because usually the second movie in a trilogy has bad guys having the upper hand. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Oh, that's really good. Well, for me, if we're going by the color of the title, I think it's along the lines of the protagonist being seduced by the dark side, or making a big difficult choice. Because as you said, Reya, it's the previous titles in red have been Revenge of the Sith and Return of the Jedi. Anakin and Luke are both seduced to the dark side in those movies, with Anakin turning to the dark side and Luke resisting it. But they have to make difficult choices. Anakin has to confront the fact that the Jedi aren't as good as he perceived, and that he's not as powerful as he wants to be, and that his wife may die in childbirth. Luke has to confront the uncomfortable truth that Vader is his father, and that Yoda and Obi-Wan want to kill him, which he doesn't want to do. So this could mean something for Rey, and as we've discussed, there's rumours that Luke wants her to kill Kylo Ren, which she doesn't want to do. That echoes the protagonist facing a difficult choice, and maybe Luke might be what Obi-Wan and Yoda were for him, just as she might be placed in Luke's shoes. And as for the title itself, The Last Jedi, I think it means two things. I think Luke is the last Jedi, because he's the last Jedi following the order of the old Jedi ways, or the Jedi Code, as it is. And as we've learned in the prequel trilogy, it's not the right way to follow the Force, essentially. It always ends in tragedy, as Anakin destroyed the Jedi Temple in the prequels, and Ben Solo, we presume, destroyed Luke's Jedi Academy. So maybe it's up to Rey and maybe Kylo Ren and Luke to find a new way of what it means to be a Jedi, or at least a Force user.
So you're saying, Mary, that you believe it's the Last Jedi in the sense of the old Jedi way, not that there aren't going to be any more Jedi going forward?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Following those old ways. Mm-hmm. They'll have to make up new ways for Jedi to follow.
I think that'd be great if that were the case, because one thing that once you get into thinking deeply about Star Wars, as Star Wars nerds like us tend to do, you really realize that the Jedi are really messed up. Like, there's so much that is wrong with the Jedi Order, and these are supposed to be the good guys. Like, just thinking about how they took little kids away from their family, thinking about how they treated Anakin Skywalker when he was a kid. I mean, they really, I think they damaged him in a way, and I think that they showed him that everything was built on posturing in a way. For me, Anakin's my favorite character in Star Wars. I mentioned that before. They had a huge hand in Anakin's turning toward the dark side. It was so kind of heartbreaking in a way when Anakin's trying so hard to tamper those dark impulses that he has, and trying to be a good Jedi and do what's right, and then they tell him, oh yeah, go spy on Palpatine. And that goes against everything that he believed in, So it's just so flawed. And that idea of no attachments when, as Anakin tells Padme, you are encouraged to love. It's just that you can't have an attachment. It's just kind of really messed up on many levels. The fact that the wisest of the Jedi are actually not so wise after all. They give you terrible advice. So it's really messed up. It has to end. But then the principles that are there that draw all of us to the idea. I think when you're a kid, you usually want to be a Jedi, right? A Jedi Master, Jedi Knight, or a Sith in my case. But there's beautiful things in the philosophy. There are things to salvage there. And I think it just needs a transformation. It needs to evolve. And the idea of the title reflecting that, I think that would be beautiful if that was the case.
Yeah, and I'll just a quick point. It also, comparing the EU to canon, one of the things Luke did to reform the Jedi was to allow Jedis to have love and attachments. And while that did, lead to some cases like Jason Solo turning to the dark side because he wants to protect his girlfriend and his daughter, and even Jaina, turning to the dark side at one point because of the death of her brother. Attachments always brought them back out and into the light side, which kind of wasn't the case with the old Jedi, way, because you had people like Barriss turning to the dark side because of how messed up the Jedi was and how corrupt she believed they were.
Yeah, actually, they have kind of hinted it in canon, this, what you have just said, Mary, because that, they were wrong. But it's not about, first thing I would say is that, if you, just to digress for a second, the Jedi and the Sith aren't that very different, because the language that in canon in recent comics, it's been shown that some of the distress signals and language that was used by the Sith and the Jedi, the language was the same. It was an archaic Jedi language. The tomb of Darth Bane in the Clone Wars has writing on it which looks exactly like the writing on the temple in Lothal, which Ezra is walking through. the writing is the same. So there is some sort of unity, and somewhere there has been a division that needs, a fracturing that needs to be healed. So you have the dark side embracing these kind of emotions, you have the light side shunning these emotions. So I mean, embracing it a little too much. It's a bit. It's about moderation, and the closest I've seen, and I bring this topic up, and I think I eat everybody's head a lot on it. Is in Dark Disciple, at that moment when Ventress sacrifices herself, that, Dark Disciple is the romance between a Jedi and a former Sith, now Night Sister, and Night Sisters are Darksiders. So both characters, one starts in the light, one starts kind of in the dark, but it's the dark side person who, in an act of selfless love, sacrifices herself. That's Ventress, and is about to actually kill Dooku, because he's kind of plunged himself fully into the dark side, from light to dark. And I'm kind of expecting Rey and Kylo somewhere in the future to have this sort of, zigzag kind of thing take place, where one will go to one side, one will go to the other side, or something. He also realizes that he is a Jedi, he better not, because when he sees her sacrifice. So similarly, I think it's about emotions like love and caring for people, and I'm not talking about romance. You don't necessarily need it to be romance. It could be affection for one's family, it could be anything. These are emotions that can actually lead to a positive thing. It need not be like what the Jedi said, throw it, get it, throw it, let the Force in, and it's only the Force that exists, I think that's the lesson that we may get.
Very, very interesting, guys. I think we've reached the end of our discussion, so I just want to ask any closing thoughts about Luke, about all of what we've spoken about. Anything else to say? I would just like to add that I'm ready to trust these filmmakers. I think they did a great job with 7, although it is flawed. It's still, for me, it recaptured the magic that I was hoping to see. So I'm ready to trust them with Luke. I think that it's pretty obvious that it's not going to be the same character that we left off with in Return of the Jedi. That it can't be, because so much has happened, so much has gone on. He's changed. We already saw signs of that in the brief appearance that he made. I just want to know why, and I want it to be something that's done realistically. I don't want it to be like, oh, he just changed, and for weak reasons. I hope that they do a good job in showing us how that came to be, and that whatever he does going forward is true to Luke in some way. And I think I can trust them to do that. I think Rian Johnson, having love for Luke's character, and just from what we've seen of him, in his other work, I'm very encouraged. So I'm really hopeful that we'll see a great Luke, whatever he is, pop up in 8.
Definitely. I agree with you. I have great hope for how episode 8 will turn out. I know a lot of people say that it may not be, be as popular as The Force Awakens, because Force Awakens came after such a long gap. The first movie always does really well, but I still have very high expectations that this movie is going to be the best of them. It'll be considered a classic in the years to come.
Yeah, I was going to say at least Empire of Empire Strikes Back. I've just quickly thought of something, and I'll quickly run it past. I don't think, I know when the title was released, a lot of people were worried that Luke would die, but again, with the passing of Carrie Fisher, I don't think Luke will die at all. I think he's perfectly safe now.
I agree. Yep.
This concludes our Luke podcast. We hope you guys had as much fun listening to it as we did. If you want to connect with us, you can email us at starwarsconnection09@gmail.com. You can share your questions, your comments, or just reach out and say hi. You can also comment below on our YouTube page and on our Mixcloud. Don't forget to subscribe to our Twitter, and you can also follow us on Tumblr. We'd like to thank all of our contributors, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Until then, may the Force be with you.